My name is Nora Caldwell. I am 32 years old, and my story began in a small, fog-kissed town on the coast of Maine called Port Blossom. Our family name wasn't just known there. It was etched into the weathered sign of a downtown institution, Caldwell and Sons Booksellers, a labyrinth of towering shelves and dusty light that had been passed down through 3 generations. The salty air of the town carried a long-held assumption, spoken over coffee at the diner and whispered between neighbors: a Caldwell will always run the bookshop. It was a truth as reliable as the tide. Except, it was never meant for me. From my earliest memories, I understood I was a quiet observer in my own family's narrative, a supporting character in a story that revolved around my younger brother, Leo. He was the sun, and I was the satellite, orbiting his brilliant, chaotic energy. He is 3 years my junior, a boy who sailed through school on a current of charm and last-minute effort, his missteps always cushioned by the unwavering adoration of our parents. Every hope, every proud glance, every ounce of the family's concentrated future was aimed squarely at him. I remember a crisp autumn afternoon in the 4th grade. I came home clutching a blue ribbon, first place in the county science fair for my detailed project on tidal pool ecosystems. My mother, her hands dusted with flour, gave it a fleeting smile before pinning it to the corkboard behind a stack of mail. A week later, Leo won a local sailing regatta, not the main event, but a junior heat. Our backyard filled with the scent of grilled lobster and the cheerful noise of 24 guests celebrating his victory under a string of twinkling lights. I can still see my father, his arms slung proudly around Leo's shoulders, his laughter echoing across the lawn. The day I was accepted into the state's most competitive marine sciences program, my father scanned the acceptance letter, his brow furrowed. "Well, that's something, Nora," he said, handing it back. "Just try not to be so intense about it all. It can make people feel like they're not keeping up." That same semester, when Leo scraped by in trigonometry with AC-, my father opened a bottle of vintage port he'd been saving. "Look at that," he'd beamed. He pulled it off. The boy's got resilience. For years, a quiet, persistent question haunted me. Am I not enough? So I tried to be more. I buried myself in books, my nights illuminated by the glow of a desk lamp. I joined the oceanography club, the debate team, and won academic awards that took me from state competitions to national symposiums. Leo remained Leo, charming, adrift, his nights spent with friends on the docks, his days a series of near misses and easy graces at school. Yet, whenever he found trouble, my mother would wrap him in a fierce embrace, her voice a soothing mantra. "He just feels things so deeply," she would whisper. "He has a good heart, he just needs guidance." My role was different. I was the keeper of the quiet, unspoken responsibilities, brewing the morning coffee, folding the laundry, organizing the garage, and, most consistently, tutoring Leo through his exams. To refuse was to invite a look of profound disappointment from my mother. "Family is about lifting each other up, Nora," she would say, her tone gentle but laden with reproach. "How can you be so withdrawn?" The chasm between us deepened in high school. I was offered a prestigious summer internship at the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution. My father's reaction was a heavy sigh. "All that time in a lab. You should be out, living a little." That same summer, Leo was caught street racing and had his license suspended. My mother took him on a week-long trip to the Florida Keys to help him clear his head. When a full academic scholarship to a university in California came through, no one from my family drove me to the airport in Portland. They were at home, hosting a lavish 18th birthday clam bake for Leo, complete with a local folk band. I have a photograph from that night, taken with my phone's timer. It shows me, small and alone in a sterile dorm room thousands of miles from the sea, holding a cup of instant noodles. I called it my collegiate send-off. For years later, I graduated summa cum laude and was immediately offered a research position at the esteemed Harborview Institute for Oceanic Studies in Portland. I wrote a long, heartfelt letter home, describing the work I would be doing on coral reef restoration. My mother's reply came a week later, a short note tucked inside a bill. "That's nice, dear. Leo is thinking of starting a gourmet food truck. We're all so hopeful for him." It was then that the truth settled in my heart, not with a crash, but with the quiet finality of a setting sun. I was not the child they worried about, and therefore, not the child they celebrated. I was the capable one, the self-sufficient one, the one who could be counted on to take care of herself and, by extension, require no space in their thoughts. In their worldview, Leo was the fragile vessel that needed constant protection, even as a man of 29 who drifted from one short-lived job to the next. I grew accustomed to the polite confusion at holiday gatherings, the tilted heads of distant relatives. "Oh, you're a Caldwell. I know Leo, of course. I don't believe we've met." I have heard that line more times than I can count. It wasn't that I didn't love them. A part of me, the little girl with the blue ribbon, still yearned for a single, unambiguous sign of their pride. But I came to learn that you cannot will recognition from hearts that have already chosen their focus. Love, in my family, was a finite resource, and it had been fully allocated. 2 years after I earned my doctorate and was promoted to lead a research division at Harborview, my father had a heart attack. It happened on a cool October morning as he was sipping coffee and reading the paper in his favorite armchair overlooking the bay. My mother's call came at dawn, her voice thin and brittle, like a seashell. "Nora, your father, he's gone." He just collapsed. I drove home to Port Blossom that same day, the familiar scent of salt and pine filling my car as I neared the coast. The town felt suspended in time. The funeral was held at the old Maritime Chapel on the Point, the same one my father had helped reshingle a decade earlier, refusing payment because it was for the community. The air was thick with the scent of lilies and beeswax. Relatives spoke in hushed, somber tones, but my mother stood beside the oak casket with a stoic grace, her eyes dry and fixed on the horizon. Leo was quiet, but it was the stillness of a mind occupied with calculations, not grief. He was already thinking about the house. A fortnight after the funeral, my mother found me in the garden, where the late roses were still clinging to their stems. She wrung her hands, her gaze lost somewhere over the gray water of the bay. "I can't keep the house, Nora," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "The mortgage, the taxes, the upkeep, it was all your father." I nodded, my heart aching for her. I knew my father had been the family's financial bedrock. Leo, true to form, was between ventures, as my mother charitably put it. Later that day, Leo approached me with a plan, his tone earnest and full of newfound responsibility. "What if we bought the house together, Nora? You could take the finished attic studio. It's got the best view. I'll live on the main floor with Clara, and Mom can have the garden-level apartment. We could keep it in the family." I hesitated, a familiar wave of caution washing over me. "And how would we split the costs?" I asked gently. "I'll contribute my share," he promised, his eyes wide and sincere. "As soon as my new project gets off the ground." I said nothing more, but the hollow echo of those words followed me back to Portland. The following week, I met with my lawyer, Anya Sharma, a woman whose calm demeanor and sharp intellect I had come to trust. Her office was in a sleek glass building that felt a world away from the weathered shingles of Port Blossom. After reviewing the proposal, Anya looked at me over the rim of her glasses. "Nora, this is a significant emotional and financial investment. I strongly recommend a co-ownership agreement that clearly defines the percentages and responsibilities. Let's make it official. 65% your contribution, 35% his, with his funding secured from his fiancée, Clara's, family trust. Your mother will have lifetime residency rights, but no ownership." "This isn't about mistrust," she added, her voice softening. "It's about clarity. It protects everyone, including the relationships." We signed the papers on a cold, bright day in early December. I moved into the attic, a beautiful, light-filled space that I slowly transformed into my sanctuary. I installed skylights, built floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, and placed my desk before a wide dormer window that looked out over the endless expanse of the ocean. It was my haven, a quiet perch above the world. Leo and Clara took over the main floor, and soon the house was once again filled with the sounds of their life, late-night gatherings with friends, the thrum of a bass from their speakers. My mother settled into the garden apartment, finding solace in her flower beds and old black-and-white films. I tried to believe we had found a new equilibrium. We had separate entrances, separate kitchens, separate lives under one roof. But by the second year, the arrangement began to fray. Leo's portion of the mortgage payment was consistently late. When I would gently remind him, Clara would intercept, her smile sweet but strained. "Don't you worry," she'd say. "Leo's on the verge of a major breakthrough with his artisanal hot sauce brand." The breakthrough never seemed to arrive. Whenever I traveled for work, I would return to find the house subtly altered. A new scratch on the hardwood floors, a wine stain on the living room rug. Leo would just shrug. "Things got a little festive," he'd say with a disarming grin. I held my tongue, clenching my jaw and retreating to my attic. I was waiting, though I didn't know for what. I was quietly, meticulously documenting the slow creep of disrespect. Then came the smaller, more personal incursions into my space. I'd find a book on my desk moved, or a note from my mother left on my pillow. "You should really air this room out more." One day, a delicate, hand-blown glass sea urchin I kept on my windowsill was found shattered on the floor. My mother claimed it must have been the wind. I didn't argue. Instead, I started a private photo log on my laptop, a gallery of small violations. The home I had invested in to preserve a family connection was becoming a place of silent, psychological warfare I had never agreed to wage. I had just returned from a symposium in San Diego, my spirit soaring. My team's research had been the highlight of the event, and a renowned institute in Norway had expressed keen interest in funding a collaborative project. For the first time in years, I felt a deep, unshakable sense of purpose, a feeling that my quiet, solitary work had meaning in the wider world. I carried the proposal home with me, a tangible symbol of my success, hoping to share the news, to finally bridge the gap with a moment of shared joy. I was breathtakingly naive. As my taxi turned onto our street, a sense of deep unease settled over me. Cars lined both sides of the road, spilling from our driveway onto the neighbors' lawns. Festive string lights were draped clumsily from the porch eaves, and a huge, hand-painted banner was tied to the railings. I thought, for a dizzying moment, that I had the wrong house. Then I saw it, a rusty pickup truck with a Port Blossom Lobster Fest '05 bumper sticker. Uncle Thomas's truck. It was parked squarely in front of my designated parking spot. I dragged my suitcase up the stone walkway, my heart hammering against my ribs. Tacked to the front door was a crude wooden sign, painted with leaping whales and anchors, "Caldwell Family Clam Bake. Welcome home." I froze on the doorstep. Home. This was the home I owned the majority of, the home I paid to maintain. And this was a party to which I had not been invited. I turned my key in the lock. The house roared with sound. A loud folk rock band, the shrieks of children running wild, a cacophony of overlapping conversations. The clean, quiet order of the house I'd left 4 days ago was gone, replaced by a chaotic swarm. A man I vaguely recognized as a distant cousin was asleep on my favorite armchair, a paper plate of half-eaten corn on the cob balanced on his chest. The serene seascape I had hung in the entryway was gone, replaced by a massive, framed family photograph from the late 90s. I wasn't in it. I'd been at a summer science camp. The first person to spot me was my cousin Sarah. Her eyes widened, and she let out a little shriek. "Oh my goodness, Nora. You're back. We thought you weren't getting in until tomorrow afternoon." Her words were the starting gun. The music faltered, conversations trailed off, and dozens of faces turned toward me. In the sudden, ringing silence, I felt like an intruder in my own home. I stood in the doorway, suitcase handle clutched in my hand, as a sea of vaguely familiar relatives stared at me. No one saw the tremor of shock that ran through me, a jolt of pure, undiluted betrayal. My mother was at the center of it all, holding court at the dining room table. Her smile dissolved the moment our eyes met, replaced by a flicker of panicked annoyance. "Nora, you're home early," she said, rising and smoothing the front of her dress. "Your flight." I was sure it was tomorrow. "You were sure?" I repeated, my voice quiet but carrying in the stillness. "But you weren't sure enough to send a text? To let me know my house would be occupied by 50 of our closest relatives." Leo appeared from the kitchen, balancing a tray of appetizers. "Nora, surprise! We decided to throw a last-minute reunion. First time the whole clan's been together in years." I looked directly at him, my gaze unwavering. "And in all the planning, a single message to me was overlooked? We were going to have it all cleaned up before you got back," he said, as if that explained everything. "Cleaned up," I murmured. "My privacy, my property, my peace of mind. All to be cleaned up." Without another word, I wheeled my suitcase toward the stairs. My attic door, which I always locked, was ajar. The sanctuary I had so carefully curated was a scene of utter violation. The spare futon was unfolded, covered in unfamiliar bedding. My books were pulled from the shelves, my research papers shoved into a corner. My desk, my sacred workspace, had been repurposed as a makeshift bar, littered with empty beer bottles, sticky rings of condensation, and a bowl of melting ice. A child's drawing of a stick-figure family was taped directly over my doctoral diploma. The air was stale with the smell of cheap perfume and spilled wine. I said nothing. My body moved with a strange, detached calm. I took out my phone and began to take pictures. Every angle, every detail of the desecration. I opened a dresser drawer to find my clothes pushed aside, making room for a pile of someone else's sweaters. I sat on the edge of my bed and took a slow, deep breath. My phone buzzed. A text from Leo. "Everyone's asking about you. Don't be weird about this. It's a special occasion." I didn't reply. I took a screenshot and forwarded it to Anya, my lawyer. The subject line: urgent, breach of agreement, and unlawful use of property. Then, I locked my bedroom door, opened my laptop, and pulled up the email from the Norwegian Institute. My hand was steady as I clicked the link. Accept invitation to collaborate. They wanted to use this house as the stage for their family drama. Fine. But my role as the silent, accommodating scenery was over. The true storm hadn't broken yet, but in my mind, the path forward was already charted, clear and bright. I stayed in that room for more than an hour. Through the floor, I could hear the party roaring back to life, the music, the laughter, the clinking of glasses, as if my presence had been nothing more than a brief, inconvenient pause. No one knocked. No one came to apologize. No one came to check on me. My eyes fell on the small, hand-carved cedar box on my bookshelf. It held my grandmother's sea glass collection, her most treasured possession, and the only thing of hers I owned. She and I had spent countless hours combing the beaches of Port Blossom, our pockets heavy with smooth, jewel-toned shards. I lifted the lid. The box was empty, save for a few crumpled cocktail napkins. My breath caught in my throat. I scanned the room, a frantic edge creeping into my calm. On the floor, near the makeshift bar, I saw them. My beautiful, curated pieces of sea glass, the rare cobalt blue, the soft lavender, the deep forest green were being used as decorative filler in a glass vase holding wilting daisies. Some were chipped, others lost in the clutter. I sank onto the floor, my back against the wall. That wasn't just glass. It was hours of shared silence with the one person who had always seen me, who had called my quiet nature a deep well. The air in the room felt suffocating. I picked up my phone again. I took photos of the vase, of the napkins in the cedar box, of the sticky residue on my desk. I pulled back the unfamiliar blanket on my bed. A smudge of coral red lipstick stained my white pillowcase. Someone had slept here, lived here in the space I had built and paid for to be mine. A soft rap on the door. It was Clara, Leo's fiancée. Nora? Are you okay? Leo says you're overreacting a little. I didn't open the door. Who was in my room? I asked, my voice flat. Oh, just my Aunt Carol and Uncle Jim. They're getting on in years, and the stairs to the garden apartment are a bit much for them. So the solution was to give them my locked, private residence on the top floor? Well, yeah. We thought you were coming home tomorrow. I ended the conversation by simply not replying. I sent another email to Anya, confirming unauthorized occupation of private quarters and destruction of personal, irreplaceable property. Photos attached. Please advise. My phone rang almost instantly. It was Anya. Nora, this is an unambiguous violation of your agreement. From this moment on, document everything. I want video. Avoid all direct conversation. Do you have cameras? No. I'm sending you a contract for a private security consultation. They can be there within 24 hours. And Nora, do not engage with them. Not by text, not in person. Only email with me copied. What are my options for removing them? I asked, my voice devoid of emotion. Legally, you have every right to have uninvited occupants removed, especially with evidence of property damage. I hung up and started a panoramic video, narrating in a low, steady voice. Desk surface damaged. Personal documents displaced. Irreplaceable heirloom, a sea glass collection, has been damaged and misused. Bed linens show evidence of use by an unknown individual. I had planned to wait out the night, but when I found my spare laptop charger plugged into the wall, its screen glowing with the words, Clara's iPad, I knew I couldn't stay. I texted my friend Maya, who lived in Portland. Code red. My house has been annexed by the entire Caldwell clan. Need a place to land. Her call came in less than a minute. Let me guess. Leo's idea of a good time. And my mother's idea of family, I said, my voice hollow. I packed a small bag in the dark, my laptop, research documents, the cedar box, now heartbreakingly light. As I walked down the stairs, the party was still in full swing. A slideshow of family photos was being projected onto the living room wall. Picture after picture of Leo and my parents at birthday parties, beach trips, holidays. I appeared in only one, a blurry figure in the background. My great-aunt waved me over as I headed for the door. Nora, dear. So good to see you. Leo was just telling us how you've been helping keep this old place afloat. It's so wonderful of you to be so generous. I offered a tight, polite smile, nodded, and slipped out the front door into the cool, damp night. I didn't look back. In the reflection of a car window, I could see them all laughing, celebrating, completely oblivious. I finally understood. I was not a part of their family. I was its foundation. The silent, sturdy thing they all stood upon, taking it for granted that I would never, ever move. But the ground was beginning to shift. The next morning, I returned, unannounced. I walked into the kitchen where the remnants of the family were gathered for a pancake breakfast. The clatter of forks and conversation ceased the moment I entered. My mother looked up, a flicker of feigned surprise in her eyes. Nora, I thought you'd be sleeping in. I slept in a place where I had a key and the door had a lock, I said, my voice even and calm as I took off my jacket. Leo stood up, starting toward me as if to de-escalate a situation he'd created. Nora, look, no one meant any harm. It was a communication breakdown. I met his gaze. A breakdown in communication is an accident, Leo. Willfully concealing something is a choice. That's not fair, Clara chimed in from her seat. We just assumed you wouldn't care. You're never here for family things anyway. You act like a guest in your own life. I let her words hang in the air for a moment, then gave a slow nod. And that assumption gave you the right to bring dozens of people into the 65% of this house that I legally own? My mother stood, her face a mask of weary exasperation. Nora, please. Don't make this a bigger deal than it is. It was about love, about family. You're always so distant, locked away with your research. Do you honestly think any of us even understand what it is you do all day? Her question struck a nerve that had been dormant for 30 years. I pulled out my phone, found the video file from the San Diego Symposium, and played it, holding the screen out for her to see. It showed me on a large stage, addressing a rapt audience of hundreds of the world's top scientists. I developed strategies to save endangered marine ecosystems, I said, my voice clear and strong over the sound of the recorded applause. This week, I was invited to lead an international project backed by the Norwegian government. But you're right. I'm sure that's not as important as a family clam bake. The room was suffocatingly silent. Leo, looking flustered, cleared his throat. You can't hold on to things, Nora. If you're going to be so busy with all that, maybe you should think about selling us your share. We need the space, and you're clearly not using it. The audacity of it stole my breath. You need the space? We want to start a family, Clara added, placing a hand on Leo's arm. It would be so much simpler if you weren't here. Simpler. The word was a slap in the face. My entire life, I had made myself smaller, quieter, simpler for them. I folded my arms. Let's talk about simple. How much is in your savings account right now, Leo? He flushed. That's not the point. Oh, I think it is, I said, my voice soft. You don't need space. You need my money. The only thing you seem to want from me is for me to sign a check and disappear. My mother gasped. Nora Caldwell, how dare you speak to your brother that way? I'm not speaking to my brother, I replied, my eyes locked on Leo. I'm speaking to my business partner. And as a business partner, he's in default. That evening, driven by a cold, clear certainty, I let myself into the main floor to use the shared scanner. Tucked into the printer's output tray was a folder someone had left behind. The label read, Seacoast Financial Loan Application. Inside was a portfolio of failure, rejection letters for 2 separate business loans, a dismal credit report, and a nearly completed application for a second mortgage on our house, signed only by Leo Caldwell. I called Anya. They tried to remortgage the property without my consent. Her response was immediate. That's mortgage fraud, Nora. Photograph every single page. I'll take it from here. I returned the folder, placing it exactly as I had found it. The argument was over. The law would speak for me now. I stayed up all night, not with rage, but with the quiet, humming efficiency of a mind that finally had a clear objective. I made lists. I drafted emails. I charted a new course. They had mistaken my quietness for weakness for the last time. The next morning, I met Anya at her office. She had already reviewed the photos. They're in clear violation of your agreement and are attempting illegal financial maneuvers. What is your endgame, Nora? I don't want to live there anymore, but I won't be forced out. I want to rent my portion of the house. I want a property manager. Anya nodded, already making notes. I know a firm. Crestline Property Partners. They specialize in contentious co-ownership situations. They're discreet, professional, and utterly fearless. By afternoon, I was meeting with Eleanor Hart, the firm's director. She listened to my story without interruption, her expression one of composed empathy. Miss Caldwell, she said when I finished, families who weaponize obligation are our bread and butter. You have a solid legal agreement and clear evidence of breach. We can handle this. I want cameras installed on my floor, I said. A new smart lock. Total control of my space. Consider it done, she replied. Our team will be on site tomorrow. That evening, I sent my first official email, CCing Leo, Clara, and my mother. Effective immediately, I am engaging Crestline Property Partners to manage my portion of the property due to multiple breaches of our co-ownership agreement. All future communication regarding the house must be directed to them in writing. Please do not approach me in person. The only reply was a text from my mother hours later. You are breaking this family's heart over a misunderstanding. Your father would be so disappointed. I read the words, felt the familiar pang of guilt, and then I forwarded it to Anya with a single note. For the record. 2 days later, The Crestline team installed a security system and a new lock on my attic door, accessible only by my fingerprint. That afternoon, I received an email from Eleanor. We have 3 excellent potential tenants for your review. All are visiting faculty at the university. I wasn't just reclaiming my space, I was redefining it. Then came the email from Norway. Invitation to lead Arctic Marine Ecology Division. It was a 3-year contract with full research autonomy, housing, and a salary that was more than I'd ever imagined. It wasn't a job offer, it was an escape hatch. It was a new world. I called Anya. If I move to Norway, what happens here? Nothing, she said. Your ownership is protected. Your management firm handles everything. In fact, it strengthens your case for non-occupancy. Go, Nora. Live your life. That night, I sat in my silent, secure attic and began to pack. The next morning, I sent a final email to my family with the legal notice from Anya attached. I have accepted a research position in Bergen, Norway, for a period of 3 years. My portion of the house will be fully and exclusively managed by Crestline Property Partners during my absence. Please direct all inquiries to them. Within minutes, my phone began to ring. Leo, my mother, Clara, my aunt, my uncle. It was as if they could feel their invisible foundation crumbling, and it terrified them. I texted Maya. The exodus has begun. Her reply was instant. Fly. Don't you dare look back. At the airport, I glanced at my ticket, PDX-BGN. For the first time in my 32 years, I smiled a full, unreserved smile, feeling no need to apologize for its brightness. Bergen was a city of rain, stone, and jewel-green mountains. My apartment, provided by the Institute, overlooked a deep, serene fjord. My lab was a hub of brilliant minds from around the world. No one knew me as Leo's quiet older sister. They knew me as Dr. Caldwell, the scientist who was going to help them understand the intricate dance of life in the deep, cold waters of the Arctic. I worked, I explored, I breathed air that felt clean and new. A month later, an email from Eleanor at Crestline. New tenant is in. A visiting history professor. 6 months rent paid in full. No issues, though Mr. Caldwell has called our office several times to complain about the impersonal nature of the arrangement. I replied, please adhere strictly to the contract. Then, a message from my mother. Family should be able to work things out. This coldness isn't you. I looked at her words, then at the fjord outside my window. I finally understood that freedom wasn't about running away from love, but about walking away from a place where it couldn't properly grow. One spring morning, an email from Anya arrived. Subject: formal offer from Leo Caldwell. He and Clara, with a loan from her family, were offering to buy out my share of the house. The presence of a tenant, a stranger living in my old sanctuary, had become an undeniable, daily reminder that Leo was no longer the sole protagonist of the story. I called Anya and agreed, with one condition. I want 20% of the proceeds to establish a grant in my father's name, the Arthur Caldwell Grant for Coastal Stewards for young marine science students from Maine. Anya was quiet for a moment. That's a beautiful legacy, Nora. A way to remember him for who he was, not who they wanted him to be. I e-signed the final papers from my office in Bergen. The house in Port Blossom, my childhood home, my battlefield, was no longer mine. I felt no sadness, only a profound, quiet relief. 6 months later, I flew to Boston for a conference and made a side trip to Portland for the first award ceremony for the grant. As I stood on the stage, I saw my mother in the back row. Afterwards, she approached me, not with a hug, but with a worn, sealed envelope. This is from your father, she said, her voice soft. He wrote it the year you left for California. I never gave it to you. I suppose I didn't think you needed it. Back in my hotel room, I opened it. My father's familiar, slanted script filled the page. My Nora, it began. If you're reading this, It means you're far away, chasing the currents only you can see. Your mother worries, but she doesn't understand your quiet depths the way I do. I see the ocean in you, my girl. Vast and deep and powerful. Don't ever let anyone convince you to be a puddle just so they can see their own reflection. You were meant to be the sea. Tears streamed down my face as I folded the letter and placed it in my wallet. He had seen me. All along, he had seen me. Leo didn't come to the ceremony, but a week later, an email from him appeared in my inbox. The subject line was empty. The message was short. I saw the news about Dad's grant. Clara said he would have liked that. I think so, too. Thank you for not making this whole thing about revenge. Maybe someday we can try again, just as a brother and sister. I didn't reply, but I saved the message. A reminder not of where I had to return, but of how far I had come. Here in Norway, I live a life carved out by my own hands. I have colleagues who became friends, a home that is a sanctuary, and work that feeds my soul. Family, I've learned, is not just about the blood you share, but about the people who see you clearly, who celebrate your light without wanting to stand in it. In the quiet solitude of my own making, looking out at the endless water, I finally found the one thing I had been searching for all along: myself.